When a billionaire hears that his wife might still be alive, the truth he uncovers is far more dangerous than grief. It was just supposed to be a quiet moment. Early morning. Gray skies hanging low over the hills, just outside Flagstaff, Arizona. The kind of silence that presses against your chest. Roland Ellington stood there alone, in front of the gravestone marked Elena Rose Ellington, beloved wife, lost too soon. 5 years. He placed the lilies, white, her favorite, at the base like he always did. Didn't say a word. He never spoke at her grave. The words never came, not on the first visit, not on the 10th, not today, but someone else did. I wouldn't leave those there. A voice, small, behind him. He turned around slowly, expecting maybe a caretaker, maybe a kid playing a prank, but it wasn't either. There, sitting cross-legged 2 rows over on the grass, was a little girl, black, maybe 7, 8 at most. Hair in 2 thick puffs, hoodie zipped all the way up. Her shoes were muddy, laces trailing, and she held a battered backpack tight in her arms like it might float away. Her skin was dry and her face was smeared with dust, like she hadn't washed in days. Roland blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said don't leave the flowers. She ain't here." He took a step closer. "What are you talking about?" She tilted her head like it should have been obvious. "Your wife's still alive." He stopped moving. Now he was just staring at her. The air didn't move. Neither did she. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't act like she'd said anything strange at all. He began, then stopped. "What's your name?" Zariah Bennett." "You lost someone here?" She shook her head. "No, I sleep here sometimes." His eyebrows lifted. "Here? In the cemetery?" "Only when the shelter's full. It's quiet. Nobody bothers me here. Except you, I guess." She shrugged, not trying to be rude, just saying it like it was. Roland rubbed his temples. This was insane. He looked back at Elena's gravestone, then at the girl. "You said my wife is still alive." Zariah nodded. "She helps me sometimes. She gave me soup and a blanket once, the blue kind with stars on it. Told me not to talk to people about her, but I think she'd want you to know. You look sad." He crouched a little now, getting on her level. Something in his chest shifted. He wasn't angry, just confused, maybe even scared to hope. "What did you say her name was?" "I didn't. But it's Elena. She told me not to forget it. I don't forget things easy." A cold sweat formed under Roland's collar. "How would you know that?" "She smells like flowers, like those white ones you brought, and she sings sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep. The song goes like..." Zariah hummed, eyes closed, off-key, a little cracked, but still, he recognized it. It was their song. One Elena used to sing on stormy nights, something her grandmother taught her. No one else knew it, not even his sister, not even the woman who handled the funeral arrangements. Roland didn't speak for a full minute. Then quietly, "Where did you see her?" Zariah picked at a rip in her hoodie sleeve. "Down by the old bus station off Lone Pine. Not lately, though. She's been gone a few days." He pulled out his phone instinctively, thought about calling someone. The police? His assistant? A private investigator? But he just stared at the screen. "I don't want nothing from you," Zariah added. "Just thought you should know. You look like you miss her a lot." He finally looked her in the eye. "Yeah," he said. "I do." But something in Zariah's voice made Roland pause, and before he left that graveyard, he knew one thing. He wasn't going home empty-handed. He didn't leave the cemetery right away. Zariah had gone back to her backpack like their conversation never happened, pulling out a cracked juice box and a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in a wrinkled napkin. She ate like she'd learned to take small bites just to make it last. Every move she made was careful, practiced, like a kid who didn't expect the world to give her much. Roland sat on the bench nearby, watching, thinking, doubting everything he thought he knew. "She gave me soup," Zariah said again without looking up. "It was warm, like real warm, in one of those travel mugs with a handle." Roland blinked. "Did she say anything to you?" "She said not to trust loud people, and that if I ever saw a man with sad eyes and a clean coat, I should tell him she misses him. That was you, right?" He felt like he'd been hit in the gut. "You remember anything else?" "She wears gloves, even when it's hot. I asked her once, and she said she had to cover up something. I think she meant a burn." That did it. His mind shot back to the night of the accident. The flames, The wreck, the melted frame of the car, and that one glinting piece of metal, her wedding ring, found near the roadside. He'd begged the fire chief for more, for anything. But the blaze had been too intense. The story they gave him was airtight. Until now. Roland stood and walked slowly towards Zaria. She didn't back away. She just looked up with those wide eyes, like she was waiting for him to decide something. You live out here all the time? Most nights. I used to stay with my aunt, but she moved to California with her boyfriend. Said I was too much. Zaria chuckled once, dry. Sometimes I get lucky and this lady named Ruth at the diner sneaks me pancakes. Roland crouched down beside her again. How old are you? 8, I think. Last time someone said happy birthday to me, I was 6, so maybe. He didn't even realize his hand was shaking until he tried to adjust his coat sleeve. How long ago did you last see her? Zaria scratched her head. Maybe 4 days. Could be 5. She gave me a box of crackers and told me to stay put. I've been waiting. Figured she got caught or had to move. That's what grown folks do when they get scared. They move. That one hit harder than he expected. Roland looked around the cemetery, silent rows of stones, wind pushing dust across the path. Everything felt heavy but clearer than it had in years. You believe in ghosts? She asked him suddenly. Not really. Me neither. That's how I knew she wasn't one. She had a pulse. I checked. He almost laughed. Almost. She held up her tiny fingers. Right here, on the neck. Just like the nurses on TV. Roland sat back on the bench and took out his phone. His contact list was long. Lawyers, executives, former senators, people who'd owe him favors. But he called one person, Juno Alvarez, an old friend from college turned private investigator who'd once helped him quietly find his cousin's runaway son in Dallas. When Juno answered, Roland didn't waste time. I think Elena might be alive. There was silence on the line, then a slow, you need to explain that. Not over the phone, Roland said. Meet me tomorrow. Flagstaff. Bring your files from the original crash. Everything. You're serious? I've never been more. He hung up and looked over at Zaria. She was now curled up with her backpack like it was a pillow, half asleep, exhausted. Zaria, he said gently, if I found her, would you want to see her again? She didn't open her eyes, just whispered, only if she still has that soup mug. But Zaria wasn't the only one who remembered the soup, and as the sun began to break through the clouds, Roland realized this little girl might be the last piece left of a truth long buried. By the time Roland made it back to his place on the edge of town, the wind had picked up. Clouds rolled in again, like the sky hadn't made up its mind. He sat in the leather armchair he hadn't touched in months, same whiskey on the side table, same untouched glass. He didn't pour any. Instead, he pulled up a folder from a locked drawer in his study, everything they'd given him after the crash. Photos, a copy of the coroner's report, fire marshal's notes, all printed, all stamped, all official. He flipped through slowly. Wreckage off a rural stretch near Payson, where Elena was supposedly driving back from visiting her aunt. Guardrail dented, tire marks faded, car overturned and burned nearly beyond recognition. They said it was a mechanical failure. They said she never had a chance. He remembered standing in front of the shell of that car 2 days after. He wasn't allowed too close. Hazardous fumes, they told him. But even from a distance, something didn't feel right. There was no body, just the ring. Just that one stupid, twisted ring. He hadn't questioned it. Not really. He was too destroyed to fight. But now, his thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. He opened it to find Juno Alvarez standing there in jeans, a plain black tee, and a beat-up jacket that looked like it had been through 5 states and 2 divorces. Still locked up like a fortress, she muttered, brushing past him. Roland tossed her the file. Tell me what doesn't add up. She didn't sit, just started reading. 5 minutes in, she glanced up. No dental confirmation? They said the body was too damaged. Heat destroyed everything. Juno frowned. They ruled a fatality without confirmation? That's lazy. She had no enemies, no reason to run. We weren't perfect, but we were fine. People don't vanish because things are fine. Roland swallowed. She scanned the report again, flipping through timestamps. Okay, the fire department marked their arrival at 3:41 a.m., but the highway traffic cam picked up flames at 3:03. That's a 38-minute gap. They said no one called it in right away. Juno raised an eyebrow. You believe that? Roland didn't answer. She kept reading. Fire damage looks intense for a car fire, like almost deliberate. You think it was staged? I think you need to go back to that site. They were on the road that same afternoon. Juno drove. Her car was old, but ran smooth. Roland stared out the window, miles of desert flashing by, head spinning. Back then, he remembered the air had smelled like gasoline and metal, and something worse. The police had cordoned off the area. Now, 5 years later, the road was just another highway scarred by weather and time. The guardrail was still bent. He stepped out slowly. Juno walked the scene like she'd been there before, hands on her hips, boots crunching on gravel. She knelt down and picked something up. Roland. He turned. She held up a tiny screw, blackened but intact. This is a camshaft bolt. Shouldn't be out here unless someone tampered with the engine. His stomach tightened. They kept walking, farther down into the dry brush where the car had rolled. There. She pointed. Char marks still stained the dirt. He recognized it immediately. And something caught his eye, a faded bit of blue fabric stuck to a brittle plant. Sun-bleached, but clearly patterned. Stars. A blanket. He picked it up, hands shaking. He didn't even realize he was crying until he tasted salt. She said she gave Zarya a star blanket, he muttered. Juno looked over at him, face serious now. If Elena was alive after that crash, someone helped her disappear. And someone wanted me to believe she was dead. But if someone helped Elena vanish, the real question was, who was trying so hard to keep her gone? The next morning, Roland found Zarya sitting on the edge of the cemetery again, swinging her legs over a stone curb like she had nowhere else to be. She had a fresh scrape on her knee and a banana in her lap. He brought her a small paper bag from a local diner, eggs, toast, and a milk carton. She didn't say thank you, but her eyes lit up before she dug in. Where'd you go last night? He asked. Behind the laundromat. It's warmer there, no raccoons. He sat beside her. You ever stay at that shelter? The one off Palm and 12th? She gave him a strange look. There's no shelter there, just an empty building with busted windows. Roland stiffened. That was the address listed on Zarya's case file, the one Juno had pulled from an old social services report. You're sure? Yeah, me and this boy named Trey went there once. Thought it was real, 'cause someone told us that's where you get hot food and a place to sleep, but it was just a trick. Nothing there but junk and old spray paint. He looked down at his hands. The system had told him she'd been through there. Even the records logged her as having stayed 3 nights at that shelter. Juno had checked. The signature line was scribbled in a shaky loop. B. Moore. A fake name, probably. Who do you remember seeing around when Elena helped you? He asked. Zarya thought for a while. Mostly just her, sometimes a nurse lady. She wore one of those badge clip things and brought bandages. She helped fix my elbow when I fell. Said her name was Carla or Carol, something like that. She didn't talk much. What did she look like? She had red hair, not like the movies, more faded, like she didn't care what color it was anymore. Roland nodded slowly. He pulled out his phone and showed her a picture. Elena, in an old photo, smiling, arms around a tree in Sedona. Zarya squinted. She looks cleaner in this, she said, but that's her. Later that day, Roland and Juno drove over to the shelter address. The building was exactly how Zarya described it. Boarded up, rotted porch, weeds taller than a toddler. No sign of life, no paperwork posted on the doors, no permit, no signage, nothing. I'm telling you, Juno muttered, circling the building. Someone faked that intake log. They wanted her on file, but off the map. Why? That's what we're going to find out. Juno made a few calls, one to an old city planner, one to a buddy who worked for the health department. The building had been condemned 2 years before the crash. It shouldn't have even been on the list of emergency shelters. Back in the car, Roland stared out the window, numb. If Elena was here, she wasn't hiding from me. She was running from something else. Juno glanced over. You think she knew about the crash? I don't think she planned it, but I think someone gave her a reason to disappear. He picked up the blue blanket again from the back seat, smelled it, still faintly like campfire smoke and soup. He closed his eyes. Then Zarya's voice echoed in his mind. She wears gloves. She said she had to cover up something. Burn scars or something worse. Juno's phone buzzed. She answered, spoke a few short words, then hung up. That nurse Zarya mentioned, she said, gripping the wheel. Her name's Carla Denton. She used to work at a private care clinic. Quit around the same time Elena died. Where is she now? Last known paycheck went to an address in Prescott Valley. Let's go. But if Carla helped Elena disappear, Roland knew she wasn't just a nurse anymore. She was a witness, and witnesses don't stay quiet forever. Prescott Valley was quieter than Flagstaff, the kind of place where every mailbox leans a little and the coffee shops all close by 7. Juno parked across the street from a squat little duplex surrounded by dying rose bushes and a broken porch swing. They watched the place for a few minutes before knocking. A woman answered, early 50s, pale, tired eyes, and, yes, red hair, faded to a dull rust. She wore scrubs even though it was a Saturday, like she hadn't taken a day off in years. Carla Denton? Juno asked, flashing a made-up ID badge. Who's asking? I'm with Private Services. This is Mr. Ellington. Carla's eyes narrowed. You the tech guy whose wife? She didn't finish. Roland stepped forward. I was told you helped a young girl recently, Zariah, and a woman named Elena. The color drained from Carla's face. I don't know what you're talking about, she said quickly, stepping back. Roland's voice stayed calm. I'm not here to arrest anyone. I'm here because a little girl said my wife is still alive, and she described her in a way no stranger could. Carla's mouth opened, then closed again. For a moment, she looked like she might slam the door, but then she sighed and stepped aside. Come in, but don't touch anything. Inside was clean but sparse. Faded couch, dusty fan, medical textbooks on the table. She poured a glass of water for herself, not them. She's alive, Carla said finally, sitting down, but not the way you think. Roland sat forward. What does that mean? I met her at the shelter behind St. Luke's before it got shut down. She didn't give a name. She was covered in burns, weak, scared out of her mind. I was running night shifts, took care of her off the record. Why off the record? Because she begged me, Carla said. She said someone tried to kill her, that she wasn't supposed to survive. Roland felt his throat close up. Carla leaned forward. She told me about you. Said if you ever came looking, I had to tell you 2 things. What? She never stopped loving you. He clenched his jaw. And, Carla hesitated, voice breaking a little, that your daughter's name is Naomi. The room went silent. Roland stared at her. Elena was pregnant? He whispered. Carla nodded, barely starting to show when she came in. I thought the baby wouldn't make it, but she fought hard. That woman's stronger than anyone gives her credit for. Juno stood up slowly, wide-eyed. Where is she now? Roland asked, standing too. I don't know. Last time I saw her was almost 6 months ago. She was living in an old converted school bus in Jerome. Said she had to move before someone found her. I don't have a number. No address. Roland sat back down hard. A daughter. He had a daughter. Carla reached for a drawer in the end table and pulled out a small, wrinkled photo. It showed a toddler with big eyes and curly hair sitting on a blanket covered in stars. Next to her, a woman in a hoodie, her face mostly hidden, but the shape of her smile was unmistakable. She calls her Mommy Lenny, Carla said softly. Roland reached for the photo with shaking hands. She has your eyes, Carla added. He just nodded, unable to speak. I never understood what really happened, Carla continued. All I know is, Elena said she got out of the car before it blew. Someone pulled her from the road and told her to stay dead. Said it was the only way she'd keep her baby safe. But now that Roland knew Naomi existed, silence wasn't an option, and whoever threatened Elena had no idea he was coming. The sun was setting when they reached Jerome, a tiny mountain town clinging to the rocks like it might fall off any minute. The place used to be a mining camp, but now it looked like something stuck between history and forgetting. Roland scanned every narrow alley and boarded window as Juno pulled the car up near a dirt road that curved out of town. She said something about a school bus? Juno asked. Yeah, converted into a home, painted yellow. Shouldn't be hard to find. They didn't speak much after that. Half a mile later, tucked behind a row of dead pines, they saw it. A faded yellow school bus, missing its front tires, windows covered with old curtains. A rusted mailbox stuck in the dirt nearby. No name, no number. Roland stepped out. Let me go first, Juno said, hand resting near her hip. Not that she had a weapon, just years of knowing things could go sideways fast. He nodded. Juno walked slowly, boots crunching softly on the gravel. She knocked twice on the side of the bus. Nothing. Then, a faint movement behind the curtain, a shadow shifting. Name's Juno, she called out gently. Not with the cops. We're just looking for someone. A long pause. Then the door creaked open. And there she was. Elena, older, thinner. A scar traced her jawline, and her left hand, yes, it was covered in a soft gray glove. But it was her. Same mouth, same eyes, same fire. She stared at Roland like she'd seen a ghost. He didn't move, didn't speak. Then she whispered, "You found me." He took a step closer. "You're alive." "I didn't mean to lie to you," she said quickly, voice shaking. I had to. He said if I didn't disappear, he'd find you too." Roland's stomach dropped. "Who?" She didn't answer right away. She stepped back into the bus and motioned for them to come in. Inside, it was cramped but clean. A mattress on the floor, a hot plate, stacks of baby clothes. And in the corner, nestled in a blanket of stars, was a little girl, Naomi. She looked up at Roland with wide, curious eyes and immediately grabbed a plush toy, an old stuffed bear missing one eye. "Hi," she said softly. Roland tried to breathe. "She's yours," Elena said. "Ours." He looked at Elena again. "Who did this to you?" Elena sat down slowly, eyes darting between him and Naomi. "After I left the fundraiser that night, the brakes felt wrong. I pulled over. That's when he showed up. Said he needed something from me. Said you had gotten too close to something with your company's security software." Juno leaned forward. "Who is he?" "Alec Renner. He was your company's legal advisor." Roland blinked. "Alec? He found out you were working on encryption tech that would expose federal surveillance contracts. He thought if you were distracted, grieving, you'd stop. I told him I'd go to the press, so he made it look like I died." Juno cursed under her breath. Roland clenched his fists. "I trusted him. I paid for his wedding. I sent his kids to private school. He said if I stayed quiet and vanished, you'd be safe. But then Naomi was born. I knew I couldn't raise her without you." Tears welled up in Roland's eyes. "I'm not letting him touch you. Not her. Not ever again." Elena finally broke down. "I didn't want to stay away. I watched your interviews. Every year on my birthday, I came here and sang our song to her." He sat beside her on the floor and took her hand. Gloved or not, he knew the shape of it by heart. "You're coming home." "I don't even know what home is anymore." He nodded. "Then we'll build one. From scratch. For her." Naomi crawled into Elena's lap and looked at him again. "You smell like pancakes," she said. He laughed through the tears, but they couldn't go home yet because Alec Renner still thought Elena was dead, and Roland was about to teach him what happens when the truth doesn't stay buried. 3 days later, Alec Renner walked into his office in downtown Scottsdale, coffee in one hand, Bluetooth in the other, barking instructions about a data leak that wasn't supposed to exist. The lobby was sleek, spotless. The elevator smelled like polished steel and expensive lies. He didn't see the black SUV idling across the street, didn't recognize the two people walking past security just before 9 a.m. One wore jeans and a t-shirt. The other pushed a stroller. Inside, Roland waited calmly in the conference room he used to call his own. It had taken one call to the board and a few carefully leaked documents to trigger an emergency meeting. Juno stood by the window. Elena sat with Naomi in her lap, a soft toy clutched tight in the toddler's hands. No more hiding, no more running. Alec entered like he owned the building. He froze when he saw them. "You," he breathed, voice catching. "You're alive?" Elena said. "Yeah, surprise." He looked at Roland. "You set this up?" Roland stood slowly. 5 years, Alec. 5 years, you let me bury a woman who wasn't dead. A daughter I never knew existed. For what? Contracts? Shares? Alec's jaw twitched. "You don't understand what was at stake." "No," Roland cut him off. "You don't. You don't get to play savior and villain. You tried to erase them." Security entered the room, followed by 2 board members and a state investigator Juno had called the night before. "Mr. Renner," the investigator said, "we have some questions about your activities regarding company intelligence protocols and off-the-books payments made to a private contractor near the time of Elena Ellington's reported death." Alex stepped back. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," Juno said, tossing a flash drive on the table, "we can." Inside that drive were bank statements, text messages, and camera footage, old, shaky, but clear enough to show Alec at the site of the crash that night, standing over Elena, making a call. You planned the fire, Elena said, voice calm. You paid someone to rig the brakes, stage the wreck. You watched me burn, thought I'd die, but I didn't. She stood now, holding Naomi's hand. And you know what, Alec? That was your biggest mistake. Alec made a move toward the door, but the guards were already there. As they led him away, he glanced back, eyes flashing. You think this is over? No, Roland said. I think this is justice starting to work. Later that evening, back at Roland's home in Flagstaff, Elena stood barefoot in the garden behind the house she once designed. Naomi chased fireflies with Zariah, who had now taken up residence in the guest room and was already calling herself the official big sister. Roland watched them through the window, arms crossed. Juno sat on the couch, sipping cold tea. You good? She asked. No, not yet, he said, but I'm getting there. She nodded. You keeping them close this time? Closer than anything. He turned back to the glass. Elena laughed outside, really laughed. Naomi squealed and ran in circles. Zariah fell into the grass, smiling like she finally belonged. You know what the hardest part was? Roland said. Not the grief, not the doubt. It was the quiet, that dead silence in my chest that never left. Until she showed up in a cemetery and said 6 words. Your wife is still alive, Juno said. Exactly. They sat in silence a little longer. Outside, Naomi crawled into her mother's lap and pointed at the stars above. That one's mine, she whispered. Zariah pointed to another. That one's mine too. Elena looked up at the sky, eyes full, voice soft. And this one? This one's for anyone who was ever told to disappear, but kept shining anyway. Because love doesn't burn that easy. It hides. It survives. And if you're lucky, it finds its way back home. Sometimes, the people we think we've lost are just waiting for someone to keep looking. Never ignore the quiet voices. They're often the ones carrying the truth. If you know someone who feels forgotten, reach out. One honest word can change everything.